Okay. All right. Okay. So now we're going to do that bumper that we talked about. Well, anytime you're ready, go.
This is Ken Clitoris with Stillness to Success, and you're listening to Jeff Smith. Vroom, vroom, Veer.
Whoa. You sounded like that sexy nighttime DJ guy.
That's what I was going for.
Good job, Ken. Okay, I'm going to hit stop. I'll be right back.
Are you ready to thoughtfully steer away from your revved up, frenzied, and far too often scripted life? Then welcome to Vroom Vroom Veer with Jeff Smith, where he guides you down the road differently traveled by sharing unique experiences with guests who have managed to shift away from a life stuck on cruise control and veered their way into a more authentic and fulfilling one in all sorts of interesting and kind of remarkable ways. Get ready to Vroom Vroom Veer with your differently traveled road chauffeur, Jeff Smith.
Katty Douraghy, thank you so much for being on Vroom Vroom Veer, and welcome to the show. How's it going?
Thanks, Jeff. Glad to be here. Things are going great.
Things are awesome, right? I'm on the beach. You're in your house. You're dwelling in possibilities. It's an awesome Friday.
Yeah.
Okay, so you are at kattydouraghy.com, and also you have your book out, thebutterflyyears.com. So,
Yep.
And talk a little bit about what you're most excited about in your business, which is different, but go ahead and talk about it anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. So I own a recruiting agency for creative talent. So advertising, marketing, design talent.
Awesome.
And every day is an exciting day because we're working with creatives. So there are no 2 days that are the same. I get to look at amazing portfolios every single day and get inspired.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah. So I'm a creative groupie is what I call myself.
And I bet you're a creative yourself.
Not in the traditional sense, although I did write a book, so I guess I am.
Yes, you are now. You are now.
I am now. Yeah. So
that was awesome. Okay, so later on, not now. Later on, this is the tease moment, right? We're going to talk about a story that includes transformation, good word, hope, good word, and living in the moment, but not right now. First, this is Vroom Vroom Veer, right? So everybody knows, Vroom Vroom Veer, we have to go back in time and talk about you and your childhood. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Iran. So I am.
Okay, that's a different answer. I've never talked to somebody that grew up in Iran.
Yeah. So I'm an immigrant. I have an immigrant story in there. So I grew up there. I was there until I was 13.
Okay.
And we moved when the Iranian Revolution happened. So I moved, my mom and my brother and we moved to the States.
Right.
And my dad stayed behind. And that's a whole nother story. Maybe I'll write a book about that one.
Sounds like some drama there, right?
Just life drama, world drama.
Of course. Yes. Yeah. Wow. Okay, you just teased a whole nother show. We'll save that one. So what was childhood growing up in Iran like?
Iran was fantastic. It's such a beautiful, rich country. We had a great family life, very strong women influences in my life. My grandma was a very strong person. My mom was a very strong person. I was surrounded by my mom's cousins and sisters, and just like that side of the family was a huge influence on my life. So life was good, and then things changed.
Talk about culture shock going from there to the States. So where did you land in the States?
Yeah, so Tehran at the time was, I think, maybe 10 million people. It was a very, very big city. So we left there and we went to London for a short time, and that's another big city. And then we landed in Los Altos, California, pre-Silicon Valley. So it was a sleepy little town.
You're right. Nothing.
Lights out at 8 p.m.
Wow. Yeah, everything folded up.
Shock.
Like if you didn't get your shopping done before dark, you got to wait till tomorrow.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. So that was a big shock. And high school was a shock because when we moved, it was already in the middle of 9th grade.
Okay.
And I think high school is tough for many people anyway.
Everybody.
Let alone it being in the middle of the year. And, during this time, the hostage crisis had happened in Iran as well.
Right,
So
I remember that.
That
Right.
wasn't quite fun to be Iranian at the time, or at least my 13-year-old self didn't know how to be Iranian. So
Sure.
I pretended I was something else.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, we're all doing a level of that, but sounds a little traumatic.
It was.
I
And
bet. Yeah.
as a young teen, we don't really have the tools to cope as well.
Not really, no.
So my best mechanism for coping was to pretend I was Italian.
Hey, why not? I think a thing that people don't get, I guess, parents maybe forget, is that, like, I know in high school, like, all I cared about is fitting in, right? Trying to find a place to fit in, and nobody does, right? But we all kind of find like refuge in our groups and our little mini identities, right?
Exactly.
Right. Okay. So did you end up going to college after high school?
I did. So the two great things that came out of college were two teachers that were very influential for me. One was my high school English lit teacher, and the other one was my history teacher. So Mr. Ferrentinos and Mr. Halstead.
Okay.
And so when I went to college, I went to UC Santa Cruz, and I hardly spoke. I spoke English, but I didn't speak English very well.
Okay.
But for some reason, I just chose to become a literature major. So I just made things I made things really hard on myself because I had to work twice as hard.
Right. First, you have to learn the words, right? And then.
Yeah. But hopefully somewhere Mr. Ferrentinos will be proud that I actually wrote a book. So his influence definitely was long lasting, even though I didn't realize it at the time.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So was it kind of like a party kind of school, or was it more like you're working and going to school? And what was the experience like?
UC Santa Cruz was a phenomenal school.
Okay.
At the time, well, first of all, like looking at your beach picture here.
Right.
Santa Cruz is a beach city.
Yes.
My room didn't look at the ocean, but our quad area, you just looked over and you just saw this just beautiful water. And Northern California is such a beautiful place. And this was in the jungles of Santa Cruz Mountains.
Right.
And it was just absolutely stunning. So I made, for some people, it was a party school. I don't think it was necessarily a party school for me. What it really was for me, speaking of transformation, it was, I think, my first opportunity to just kind of find my legs. The high school years were just really, really difficult, and I never fit in.
Right. So you're just surviving mode, right?
Yeah, for sure. And Santa Cruz really opened its arms. And even though I was a fish out of water, I was definitely not the Santa Cruz hippie vibe, but I loved every moment of it. And I think the friendships that I made there have been long-lasting, lifetime friendships. Right. And everybody was accepting that. That's the biggest. That was the biggest lesson. It was a very, very inclusive community.
I think you got lucky because I went to. So one time, my wife went to Japan because she's Japanese. They do that. Japanese people go to Japan.
They go to Japan? Okay.
Yeah, quite a bit. And for whatever reason, I don't remember why, I didn't go too. And on this occasion, I decided, well, I don't want to spend this long weekend before Mother's Day. I guess it wasn't a long weekend. I think it was Mother's Day weekend, though. And I went to a retreat somewhere in Northern California. I'm blanking on the name of the place I went to. But it was like a dance and singing and music retreat. And,
well, that sounds like fun.
The people running it were from Santa Cruz, I think, or somewhere around Santa Cruz. So most of the people participating in this thing, it was like the dancing, singing weekend. Lots of yoga and swimming, and it was awesome.
That sounds like Santa Cruz.
Yeah, those people were amazing. I had never met a more open group of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Obviously, they weren't all from Santa Cruz, but A lot of them were. And I was like, wow, I got to check this place out. I haven't, not yet, but it's on my list. Yeah. So good for you. Yeah. That is definitely that. Yeah. I don't know if it was definitely, it's like this yoga, spiritual, hippie is a good word, right? Definitely fits. Nobody's judging anybody. Everybody's
exactly
right. They're not even asking you, the hard questions. Like they're just love first, and then get to know you,
Yeah. And, you're so right. I hadn't really thought about this till you just said it. I was really lucky that that's where I landed, because it really was, who knows how else I would have turned out if it was somewhere else, but it was just such an inclusive community without judgment. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was in a stupid place there, and everybody was very nice to me. I had no idea what I was supposed to be doing. And one of the leaders, or I don't even know if it was a leader, just somebody that did know what we were supposed to be doing. They came up to me and said, like, you should be looking at your feet when you're dancing. And I was like, what?
Oh, okay.
Well, what I was doing was just dancing and treating it like a dance, but it was supposed to be this sort of like way of moving, but being more with your focus on you. So a lot of people danced with their eyes closed, and they weren't looking. It was supposed to be a non-judgmental kind of movement exercise.
Okay.
Right? And so I was like, just my eyes were on everybody else, right? Trying constantly to make eye contact like I'm at a dance, right? And because that's the only thing I'd ever done. And they're like, you should be looking at your feet. I'm like, how can I look at my feet and not fall down? Well, you don't have to look right at your feet, but try not to make eye contact with other people dancing. Oh, okay. I can do that. Sure.
Yeah. Be present with yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. That's where they were going. Yes. See, you get it. And I got it once they explained it to me. Okay. So, all right. So you finished college and you've got your degree now, right? So what was your first job after college?
So my first job after college, I was in retail, and I stayed in retail for 10 years. Clearly nothing to do with my English lit degree.
Right.
However, I learned how to be articulate and how to carry on a conversation. So, which I think the liberal arts are just phenomenally useful in life.
Yes.
Maybe not. I wasn't planning on being a teacher or kind of going into that path. But after I finished Santa Cruz, I went to a fashion school. I went to the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's completely different.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I wanted to go earlier, but my mom wouldn't let me go. She said I have to finish my 4-year degree first before I could do a specialized education. So
I've always that might make you some money first. Is that the idea? Or at least learn something?
Well, I think her hope had been that I was going to be a doctor. And after the first semester of taking chemistry, after chemistry class, she's like, no, you're not going to be a doctor. It's like, no, I couldn't even wrap my head around it. So I'm definitely I guess I am more of a creative. My brain definitely skews to more liberal arts for sure. So I went to fashion school and I worked at Macy's for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
I grew in the ranks and worked at 3 different stores and was a senior manager there and absolutely loved every single day.
Huh. Well, good for you.
And I think, one of the things that's really important to me, and I didn't really see the connection at first. But one of the things that's really important to me is to be in a situation where I can help others become better, stronger versions of themselves.
Okay.
And so what I did in retail, I was a personal shopper for many years.
Oh, wow. My wife did that for a while. She loved it.
I did too.
Yeah, it's like shopping with other people's money.
Yeah, I loved it. And speaking of transformation, it may not seem deep enough, but to
everything's
help, but to help somebody build confidence or self-confidence, first externally and then have it help them grow internally. That's something that I got a chance to do every day, and I loved it.
That sounds fun. You can learn. The thing about retail is you're learning about the best and worst of people, and how to deal with that, right? Because everybody gets sort of entitled when they're shopping, right? It's like I'm the customer and I'm in charge, right? And you have to deal with that. So not everybody.
Well,
I'm not saying everybody, but some, right? Some people take on that sort of like I'm the king of the world. I'm the queen of the store kind of attitude, and then you have to sort of talk them down, right?
Well, it certainly taught me how to connect with people on a different level. And it certainly taught me customer service, which I think to this day, it has helped me grow my recruiting business. Is the customer is always right.
Right.
But we also have to take care of our employees and our teams. So the customer can't be right at the expense of what's happening on the team front, So
that's true.
So you got to be able to manage both sides of it.
That's true. The customer may always be right, but that doesn't mean that they get to abuse people. That's not right. Which was I think in the military, it took me a long time to figure out those sorts of things. Like I had a boss that I'll go ahead and admit I really didn't get along with. It took me a really long time to figure him out. He had a master's degree in psychology. And he was trying to use psychology on me, and I had no clue how to make that guy happy. But what he was really good at was he was like the chief master sergeant. So in the military, that's the highest rank of enlisted people, right? So basically, they're really powerful, and nobody can tell them what to do. So they can be mean. They can take a stand. They can be powerful and stand in it, and nobody can do anything to them, right? So if I screwed up, he was going to take care of that. That was going to be between me and him, and I did, and he did, right? And that's why where we didn't get along. But if anybody else tried to mess with me, he would stand up and say, "Get the hell out of here." He would defend me, right? And
he had your back.
He had my back. And I didn't even understand what that concept was, right? Like, it's almost like it reminds me of my big brother, right? It was my big brother's job to beat me up and torture me. Nobody else could.
That's funny.
Right? He had my back. So in a weird way, even though I didn't like the beating up and the torture and, all that, I did respect the fact that he had my back. Yes.
What branch of military were you in?
I was in the Air Force, 20 years.
Air Force. Wow.
Yeah. That was awesome.
Amazing.
Yes.
Well, thank you for your service.
You're
Jeff.
welcome. Thank you for, being a thanker of my service. I don't even know how to respond to that. It was mostly fun, you're welcome. That's the best I can say. Okay. So let's go back in time and talk about this story of transformation, hope, living in the moment. You said it started sad, but it's not a sad story, right? So let's do that because we said we would.
All right. So the story and the book that I wrote is a memoir. It's my story through grief.
Right.
And because it's through grief toward hope, it does start sad. It starts with the death of my mom. And
yeah, that's going to be sad.
It's going to be sad. It is very, very sad. But it's also really about just what I learned about life and kind of realizing that as sadness was happening, there was a lot of life happening at the same time. Right. So a quick backstory, just to bring the audience up to speed, is I lost 4 family members, 3 of them within 4 months of each other. So it was my stepmom, my dad, and my mom all died within 4 months of each other. And
that's a lot. That's a lot.
It's a lot. And I don't know why I said I lost 4 family members. I lost 6 family members, 3 of them in a 4-month period, and then 3 others in subsequent couple of years. So it was a pretty dark time and a very tumultuous time, a time that I think I questioned a lot, but it was also a time that I realized how precious life is.
Right.
And really recognizing, and that's why I said, live in the moment, because it could be gone tomorrow.
Right.
And
Right.
not to
No
kind of
guarantees.
dwell.
Right.
No guarantees. And we are here. Let's kind of just maximize it, love it, live it, be
Yes.
nice to people. Right. And where the transformation comes from, I actually had seen this proverb, this quote that said, just when the caterpillar thought the world was over, it became a butterfly. And
right.
why my book is called The Butterfly Years. And somebody just gave me this little butterfly.
Yeah, I love it.
last weekend as a gift, which I love.
Right.
So it symbolizes, going through a hardship and going through a really, really dark time, but coming out on the other side and coming out with hope. And,
right.
And taking flight. Right.
Right.
That's where the transformation piece comes from. And the hope piece. I always talk about, excuse me. I always talk about, so you find this interesting. So my mom lived in Vegas.
Okay.
Your hometown.
Right.
And she passed away in April of 2011. And if you know where Sunrise Hospital is, that's where that's where she died. So and they lived at the country club, the Las Vegas Country Club Estates.
Okay. Wow.
Right there. So not too far from the hospital.
Okay.
And I remember coming home from the hospital, driving through where they lived, and the flowers were so beautiful. The birds were chirping.
Right. Yeah.
It was just the most beautiful day. Although I had gone through such a darkness with having just, witnessed death.
Right.
But there was so much life happening around me simultaneously. So that was a big, big lesson on that first day of her death.
Right.
I just kind of recognized that, what? I'm so lucky. I'm lucky.
Wow.
I'm still here.
Okay.
She isn't, but I need to live life because she can't, and because my dad can't, and because my stepmom can't. I need that responsibility to live for them.
Right.
That's kind of the journey I decided to embark on. Although certainly it would be very easy to not go there and to just really be in a dark space. And
sure.
I vacillated back and forth between grief and.
It's a process.
Oh yeah, for sure. It still is a process.
Yeah, and it doesn't stop. I'm going to go ahead and admit, right? I'm 50, almost 53. Now I've had people, relatives, aunts, grandparents, but no one super close. Mm-hmm. So I can say I am a grief, don't know anything about it person. Really don't. I know about it. I haven't experienced it. So when I was in grade school, my uncle, who was really young, he was a young teacher, just married my aunt, and she was young too. They had just finished college. They were both teachers in their 20s, I think, maybe 30s, 20s. She had one kid and was pregnant. He died in a car accident. And I had no idea how to feel. I remember, I grew up in the Midwest, and the Midwest is they're not allowed to have emotions publicly ever. But this is one of those times that it's publicly acceptable to have emotions. So that was interesting to me academically, right? I was like, okay, when people die, you're allowed to cry a lot. And they do. And I remember her crying and saying and coming up and hugging us, me, my brother, and my sister, and just saying, oh my God, he loved you kids so much, and just crying with grief. I can honestly say, as a kid, I had no clue how to respond to that other than cry, So I think I'd cried, but I was like, I didn't know you that well, and you hadn't been around that long. I'm sorry you died, and I have no idea how to process this, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. And I think adults still go through that too, right? We don't know how to process. I
don't know how to act. I didn't know how to act. So I was looking at people going, cry now. Okay. It's really a weird feeling though. Right. And so like with you, I mean, it wasn't just one, it was many over a short period of time. How is it? Who was the first person that you lost?
The first person was my stepmom, and
Right.
but I didn't know that they had died. So this is I think a very interesting thing that happened to me, and it delayed what was going on. So my dad and my stepmom were still in Iran.
Okay.
And my dad had Parkinson's, and he had been in a hospital or a nursing home for some time.
Okay.
And my stepmom was the one that I was getting reports of how he was doing and messages, because of Parkinson's, his vocal cords had been impacted, so he couldn't really speak.
Okay.
So she had been my connection to him.
Right.
So one day my brother and my stepbrother, so her son, called to let me know that my dad had died. And I had been so involved in my own mother's care. This was, she was towards the end of her life too, that I think my head was just in the sand. The only one that I was involved with, talked about, cared about at the time was my mom. So I kind of neglected what was going on back in Iran.
Okay.
Until my stepbrother called, told me what was going on. And I said, oh my God, like I had no idea. I'll call your mom so that I can check in with her. And that's when he said, well, she actually passed away the month before.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So that
Wow.
I just felt, so you and I were talking about emotions, and what's the biggest emotion? Judgment and guilt was my biggest emotion.
Sure.
I was like, how did I not know? How did I not know that my dad had died?
Right.
And
so now you're beating yourself up a little bit. Right.
Yeah. While still so embroiled in this other thing happening here in front of my eyes.
Right. I'm dealing with this other person, right? But I dropped the ball on these other two people, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I get it. And so like, I think there's this sort of like big book of dying out there, right? And that's the one that laid out the stages of grief. I listened to a podcast, I think it was an NPR podcast, about the lady that wrote that. And it kind of came out with, it's like, step 1 is this, step 2 is that, step 3 is that. That's not how it works, right?
That's not how it works.
That's not how it works. So talk a little bit about each one of those may or may not happen, but they can happen out of order and not happen at all. Or, like you might get stuck in one, and it's not like this thing that's just, okay, I have to like go through this map now. That's not how it works.
Yeah, I was expecting to have step 1 and then that ending and step 2 starting.
Sure. I think we all, as soon as we hear that there's a bunch of steps, we want them to go in order, right?
Yeah, there are no steps. I mean, there are steps, but certainly there's no order. And I'm not even sure if that's what she meant it, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. I don't know if she meant it that way. I think it probably got interpreted that way.
Right. Exactly. Yes. Because when she rewrote about it or talked about it, she said, no. I know that's how it ended up in the book. Yeah. But it was never supposed to go in order. You have to finish this one before you can do the next one. Yeah. That's not how it works.
Yeah. It would be good if it was a systematic thing and then you kind of came out of it.
Right.
Right. Like, you graduated from grief.
We would be robots. As it turns out, we're not. Right.
Yeah, it's very much a circular thing, and it's
and they come back. They come back.
Oh yeah, comes back. It's simultaneous. You can be feeling, love and loss at the same time, and you have, I don't personally know if there's such a thing as acceptance. You kind of learn to live with it. I don't know if.
Right.
I mean, I guess it's called acceptance for some, but yeah, it's bizarre. It's like a wave.
You carry it with you.
Right. You carry it with you always.
It doesn't go away. Mm-mm. Right. Mm-mm. I mean, and depends on, I suppose, maybe how you view like your belief system, maybe like how you sort of learn to live with it. It's different than, okay, I'm done with that now. Right. That's not, you're never going to be done with it.
Yeah.
Right.
That's kind of has been my philosophy, and how I've talked about it in my book is, I compare it to like when it first happens, when grief is in its early stages, it's like this big open wound,
It's just like shock, I would imagine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So it's a big wound. It hurts all the time. But then over time, the wound closes up, it scabs over.
Right.
And in time, it may not hurt anymore until you run your hand on the scar. You will always remember that scar is always there, and it will always remind you of the time that you had that particular wound. And different things trigger it, right? Like you smell something amazing and it suddenly takes you back to your childhood, and then that childhood reminds you of your mom or your parent or whomever. So it's very cyclical, circular. I don't know what would be the correct word for it, but it comes and goes all the time, even years later. Right.
Right. Yeah. I work with a woman who lost her 24-year-old daughter.
Oh, yeah.
I know. She got some sort of flu before COVID. And, there are a small number of people who randomly die from the flu every year. Mm-hmm. And she was one of those people. I don't want to get too far into that because I don't know all the details, but she is still, especially the anniversaries, right? That's always a big deal for her.
Yeah.
She usually takes off work because she just can't deal with seeing people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. That totally makes sense.
Yeah. And I'm also a big believer. I wonder if this, if she does something like this. I'm a big believer in rituals. So I actually call the anniversary, the death anniversary dates. I don't like that word at all. So I made up my own word. I call it an anniversary.
Anniversary?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a good day to honor. At least that's what I do.
Okay.
Right? It's I usually go to the beach and take some flowers from my mom.
Celebrate life.
Yeah, celebrate them, honor them. So it's an anniversary. I'd rather look at it from the hopeful side of it, the positive side of it.
Yes.
Even though it's an incredibly it's a day that's full of pain.
Away. Right.
No.
Right.
But I'd like to, I'd like to wear a little something that is of hers. I like to, and of my dad. So I have several anniversaries clearly in a course of a year. But I have a little glass of wine. That's my dad's favorite, or my stepdad's favorite wine. I cheers him, or have a cup of tea for my mom, or just little things. I have my own little rituals, and I expect that most people probably have their own little rituals. That
I think honor. Rituals would really help, especially because. Again, I would imagine one of these anniversaries when they're coming. So if you plan something, at least you've got a plan. Now you're not avoiding the pain. That's going to happen. But I don't know. Yeah. Everybody, the first thing that comes to my mind would be get together with people that knew them, love them, and tell amazing stories of their life. That could be that could be fun, right? Sort of like what they do in an Irish wake. It's like, let's party because we miss them and we love them and they're still with us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Actually, the reason I wrote my book is I had walked into. We had the King Tut exhibit here in LA.
Okay, I remember
quite a few years ago.
Yeah.
And I walked into the first room of the exhibit, and on the wall it said, from the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and it said, people die twice. Once when they physically die, and the second time when people stop saying their names. So that was an impetus for me to just say, you know what? I don't have kids.
Okay.
I really can't pass the legacy or down to someone else. And this is my way. This is my way of continuing to keep them alive, because their name is now in print, and hopefully whomever picks up that book.
It's out in the universe. You got it out. Yes.
Yeah, that was the goal.
That's a creative expression, right? It was in your heart, it was in your mind, and now it's out in the world. So that's a nice way to honor, right? People that you've lost. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, I don't know if you probably answered this one already, but I'm going to change the question.
Okay.
So I saw a movie and it was about grief. I can't remember what it was. Something like Deeply Lovely, Madly, Deeply Lovely. It's about this a woman who loses her husband, and the husband comes back and haunts her as a ghost. And they live together, and then other ghosts show up. It's hilarious, but also heartbreaking. But one of the things that I found most amazing about that movie, and I think they use it a lot in grief studies and teaching people about how to process grief, is how people are surprised that they're angry at the person that died. I think this probably happens a lot between spouses, but I suppose it could happen with anybody. So did you experience any anger?
Oh, yeah. For sure.
Okay.
For sure.
That's a super honest answer and really quick. Good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So describe that. How did you feel angry?
Well, my mom died of lung cancer, and she was also a smoker. And so I was angry at her for years for smoking, even before she died.
Yeah.
Before she died.
Right.
Which is such not the right thing to do. Because
well, I mean, it is what it is. You can't judge an emotion, but I get it.
Yeah,
I know where you're going.
But, lung cancer, there's a few diseases out there that have a stigma to them.
Right.
And I cannot tell you how many times I've told people that my mom died of lung cancer, and their very next question is, was she a smoker?
Right.
And she was.
It's an automatic judgment built into our society.
It is.
Yes.
It is.
Right.
And so I had
how many
that
smokers
judgment.
don't die of lung cancer?
Yeah.
Way more.
And
way more. Right.
Yeah. And I've had plenty of people in my family who died of lung cancer, and they were not smokers.
Right.
So, but now I'm smarter and I know. But back then I wasn't.
You were angry. Right.
I was angry and I was very judgy, and I lumped the two together. You would never hear someone say, "Oh, so and so died of breast cancer," and have a reason, or died of brain cancer and have a reason. But lung cancer automatically has that stigma.
Yes.
And I had it.
Sure.
So I was angry at her. And I think the latter years of her life, and I regret this big time, the latter years of her life, we probably argued more than we should have. It was too late to change anything. Even if she had quit smoking, it wouldn't have changed anything.
Right, right.
So anger was a very dominant emotion before or after.
Before and after, right.
Mm-hmm.
Ouch.
Yeah, only if she didn't smoke, but that's not the case. Especially afterwards, my uncle died of lung cancer and he didn't smoke. And
it's unfortunate, but it probably helped you have an aha moment at least.
Yeah.
Right. I can now stop judging and being angry at mom.
Yeah.
Because that's just not probably what if you're going to die, you're going to die. Right.
Yeah. And who
everybody
knows?
dies. And who knows?
Yeah.
And really, I mean, I'm going to tell this story again because I love it. So I had a college teacher way back when in Hawaii in like the early 90s. And he was also an energy worker. And for whatever reason, he invited me to get some energy work at his house on the weekend or something. And then after that, he told me this story that he had heard. I think it was in a book, but it was a guy who was sitting on a beach and just watching the waves roll in. And it's kind of like what's behind me right now, right? and this voice just sort of like arose in his head and said, "We are not here to know. We are not here to compare. And we are not here to judge." And he said, "I try to live my life by these." And I was like, shut up. I don't even know how to respond to that, let alone, take that in and try to work with that because I was like 20, right? But now that I'm not 20 and I'm 53 almost, I think I want to live that way. It's hard. It's hard to believe those things and act in a way that makes it seem as though that is true. But whenever I catch myself judging people, I try to remember that. And comparing too. I mean, and knowing is the hardest one because we all want to know things. We can know as much as we want, but it's not going to, change much.
So what was the second one? We're not here to know. We're not here to
compare.
Compare. Okay. I'm going to write that down.
And we're not here to judge. Right.
Yeah.
So like, I think the compare and judge, most people go, yeah. I've been caught doing that. The knowing thing is like, really? I still struggle with that one.
Yeah.
But I mean, you think about like all the knowledge on earth that you could possibly get is not going to tell you much about the universe.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I tell you, there's a lot of comparison and judging in grief. You know,
Of course.
I judge myself. I probably, would look around and say, I wonder if that person's crying, more, or should I be crying more, or I'm not crying enough, or it's just so not right.
Right. I think probably I hate being in any sort of situation where I don't know how to act. I think we all have a fear of that, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know what I'm supposed to be feeling now. that ambivalence of like, I've never had this experience before. I don't know what to do with it. I think that's hard. I don't know. Did you experience any of that?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that the probably the biggest lesson I learned was that we all grieve differently.
Okay.
What I go through is different than what my brother went through, and will be different than when somebody else's, loved ones pass away. We all own our own emotions, and we don't know what's happening, but there's no comparison.
Right. And
there certainly is no judgment either. But it took me a while to learn, and that I hope that's a lesson that people learn from the book.
Right.
Is that we just own it the way it is. Just because I'm not wearing black or I'm not crying enough or whatever, doesn't mean that I'm not in pain. I am, but I'm just not, maybe it's an inward thing. It's not so much an external thing.
I don't want to dump that on you right now. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a cultural thing. Different cultures just deal with it differently. There's norms in different cultures, and, it's, just to be with people. I mean, that's the important thing, is just to be present and just to be.
Right. And let the process sort of happen.
Yeah.
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 And
there's not a magic word to say to someone to take their pain away.
No, that's the other thing, is people have no idea what to say to you.
Yeah.
Right. They don't. Sorry for your loss. Trust in God. Things like, I mean, okay, you have to say something. Thanks.
Yeah.
Sorry. Right. It's so let's talk about how we're getting through to hope, and maybe like some what you found out from positive psychology and post-traumatic growth.
So a couple of things happened. One was, I think probably most of your audience knows this Maya Angelou quote that says, "Hope and fear cannot occupy the same space. Invite one to stay." And early on, as I was kind of experiencing this duality of like love and loss and pain and, death and life, and like this thing was happening and I didn't know what was going on. I just knew that I had this incredible zest for life. Like I was saying yes to everything.
Wow.
And taking on additional responsibility and going on more trips, and like as if somebody turned on the switch button that said, hey,
live.
Yeah, exactly. Time's running out.
Right.
Go do whatever you want to do.
Yes.
And many years later, I was reading a book, and in the book, it was Option B, the Sheryl Sandberg, Adam Grant book.
Okay.
And in there, Adam Grant talks about post-traumatic growth. I'd never heard about it before.
Right. As opposed to post-traumatic stress. We've all heard of that. Yes.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. And basically post-traumatic growth, not the scientific version of it, just the Katty version of it, basically says, when someone goes through trauma and they decide that, okay, I'm going to take life by the horns and I'm going to just go with it. There are people who, they start foundations, for example, when they've lost a loved one to a disease or to a trauma. They go out, they help other people deal with it, and they help support other people to deal with it. this notion of the zest for life was one of the things I was experiencing. I think writing the book was another way of me trying to help other people who are going through grief. And when I read about post-traumatic growth, it just made sense. I was like, oh, is that what's happening? Is that why I'm seeing the beauty in the world versus just feeling, the sadness, or I'm feeling sad one moment and feeling happy another moment. And it was hard to explain. Again, there's judgment in that too, right?
Okay.
There's judgment in, I remember this vividly, going to a Zumba class, going to a little dance class.
Right.
And doing it with so much guilt, even though it felt so good to be there and the endorphins were kicking in and I was just feeling, it was healthy for me to do that, but I was doing it with guilt because it was only 6 months after my mom had died. And like, should I be dancing 6 months later?
I'm not allowed to have fun yet.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Right.
And who says that, right? I say that. Does society say that?
No. Yeah, right. No. I mean, anything that pops into your head in that moment, I get, right? Because you're swimming in unknown waters, as they say. So
exactly.
I had another guest. She was in the shock phase, okay, just after her dad died. And she was just sitting in that pain. And all the family members are just, they're just there in the pain. And she just got up and said, I got to get out of here. Right. And she just took a walk out in the forest. Right. And she was present. Right. And then for about however long, 5 minutes or whatever, she got a break. And she was like, oh, okay, that pain isn't like permanent. It can take breaks. I know when I go back in there, I'm going to be back in it. But she gave herself permission to have that little bit of, it's not an escape. You're not escaping. I've got a no escape clause in my spiritual rule book. You're not escaping anything, but you can take a rest. You can take a break. You can set it down and say, I need a little recharge, right?
Yeah.
Yes, right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And nature, I think, has such a powerful, nature is such a powerful tool for that.
Totally.
We see regeneration and we see growth all the time. The sun does come out every morning.
Right.
And, we see the flowers blooming and they die and then the buds come out. That's just like, I think that just that regenerative nature of nature.
Yes.
Is a great medicine.
Yes.
I know it was for me. Just being out there, going for walks,
right,
being with the flowers, going to the beach. And for her, going to the forest, I'm sure she could probably pick up on that energy.
Yeah. And just feeling like what you were saying before, like when you drove through and the birds were chirping, it was a beautiful day. It's like you're reminded that you are still alive and what a gift.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We don't know what is on the other side of death, but we're here now and enjoy this. Yeah.
And I mean, although at the time I was like, how dare the birds be singing, right? It's like, it's a sad day. How could there be so much beauty when there's so much darkness? It should be
raining and there should be like dark clouds and no sunshine. I get it. Wow. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Well, that's good. At least we've opened up and we've started laughing about dealing with grief. And I think we've gotten to hope. So let's talk a little bit about how people can best get in touch with Katty. So go ahead and say, let's see, Katty. And now I'm going to say it wrong again.
Douraghy.
There you go. Douraghy. I know KattyDouraghy.com, right?
Yes. Probably the easiest way is butterflyyears.com.
Okay.
That one, everybody can spell that one.
Yes. And you're going to make hold on, I wrote it down. You're going to make a discount code, right?
Yes, I'll make a discount code, Vroom15 for your audience. So I wrote the book, just to give a little bit of a background to it. Sure. I wrote the book, but that wasn't my intention initially. My intention was always to do some sort of a self-help book for people to go through their own grief journey.
Okay.
But clearly the memoir and my parents' story, somebody from up there was like, no, you got to write this. So the book came out first. And after the book finished, I did create a journal for people to just journal for themselves.
Okay.
I'm a big proponent of having
writing.
some sort of having a tool to finish those unfinished conversations. I think that's for me, that was the hardest part of grief. And the thing that really helped was to write and to continue to journal and to continue.
So writing the book and journaling about it, that was sort of like a therapeutic sort of.
Very much so. Very therapeutic, very cathartic and also to continue remembering. Like I had forgotten a lot of things about my mom. I was only remembering these last few years.
Sure.
The illness years.
Right.
So writing and kind of going beyond that was super helpful to just remember the good times.
Yeah.
So I created a journal.
Yes.
And for that purpose, for people to take care of themselves, to remember the good times, to take note of their gratitudes,
tell those stories. Yes.
Yeah. And all the good that's still around them.
Good things.
The good things.
Right.
So that's what the discount is for anybody who's interested in that, to kind of go through their own grief to growth journey.
Gotcha. Okay, and that's Vroom 15, and she's going to give me a special link that you can find in the show notes. Katty, this has been, I don't want to say it was a blast, because I would feel bad about saying that, but it was transformational. It was a transformational blast. It ended in blast. Boo! There you go.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it.
All right, take care.
Okay, bye.
Thanks for taking the time to ride along with us on another episode of Vroom Vroom Veer. For podcast info and show notes, be sure to head over to vvveer.com. That's VVER.com. Man, that's fun to say. And we'll catch up with you next time here on Vroom Vroom Veer.